So Donald didn't get his way. A judge has him. Defied him? No, that's sort of the wrong way of putting it. A judge has rendered a ruling saying that Donald cannot use deploy National Guard troops in an American city. So, what's he going to do instead? Well, he's going to invoke the Insurrection Act. And this has been the problem all along, hasn't it? I mean, the wheels of justice grind slow, but fine, we're told. But what happens when they grind so slowly and so fine that justice ends up not being done? This is the situation we're facing right now. By invoking the Insurrection Act, whether or not that is ruled to be constitutional, he's going to do whatever he wants to do. Who's going to stop him? This becomes the age-old problem of our time. Not age-old, the problem of our time. Donald breaks the law. He does something unconstitutional. It winds its way through the courts. He loses, he loses, he loses. It gets appealed, it gets appealed, it gets appealed. Goes to the Supreme Court, where we don't know what's going to happen because of the corrupt, illegitimate supermajority. Sometimes, actually 24 out of 25 times now, they take up Donald's emergency appeal and rule in his favor, not by deliberating, not by doing what courts are supposed to do, taking their time and rendering considered rulings. No, but by immediately handing down a shadow docket, which gives Donald everything he wants. That is not a final decision. They are not adjudicating the constitutionality of his actions. They are simply saying, we don't know yet, but we'll tell you someday. In the meantime, Donald can keep doing this potentially illegal, unconstitutional thing. And now, by invoking the Insurrection Act, he's just ratcheted things up to such a degree that we don't know where this is going to end. What we do know is that the chaos that is deliberately and intentionally being created in American cities, blue American cities, is going to get worse. More people are going to get hurt. And he will be more empowered. Because the truth of the matter is, who's going to stop him? If the Supreme Court did do the right thing in this instance, what's the enforcement mechanism? Another one of the problems we have faced continually in the last 10 months. Because the Trump regime will say, well, you want to stop us? You and what army? Because the army belongs to us. Let's dive in. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's episode of Barry Trump Live. It is great to have you here. Today was our 5th full day of Donald's government shutdown, and the Democrats are standing their ground. They are refusing to agree to the Republican funding deal. And their reason continues to be that the Republicans' offer fails to renew subsidies that keep healthcare costs down under the Affordable Care Act. Donald is refusing to negotiate. I mean, we hear rumblings that he might be willing to work with Democrats to get the right deal, as if he even knows what that means. But the whole thing is quite frankly his fault. He's never going to take responsibility for that. Instead, he's sending his minions out to lie to the American people. We got quite a few examples of this today. A day ending in Y and all. But the Republicans know that they are under a great deal of stress here because most of us aren't that stupid. most of us are not willing to believe the lie that the Democratic Party, which controls none of the branches of government, is actually responsible for the shutdown. So let's start with the vile House Speaker Mike Johnson. Here he's telling just a most blatant lie about his party's attitude toward health care. Take a look.
So they created a red herring. A red herring is a distraction. They decided that they would pick a fight on health care. Well, let me look right into the camera and tell you very clearly, Republicans are the ones concerned about health care. Republicans are the party working around the clock every day to fix health care. This is not talking points for us. We've done it. A big part of the One Big Beautiful Bill, the Working Families Tax Cut, was to fix health care. Health care is broken in America. It's too expensive. The quality of care needs to rise. We need more access for more people, and we have lots of ideas to do that.
Yeah, okay. None of that is true. I'm kind of getting tired of saying that phrase, but it happens to be relevant anytime somebody like Johnson or Donald or Caroline Leavitt or Stephen Miller or JD Vance opens their mouths. The Republicans have fought the Affordable Care Act for years. During Donald's first term, they tried to repeal it dozens of times with no replacement plan, concepts of a plan, of an idea or something. Donald is in his 10th year as a leader of the Republican Party. And in his 5th year as the person in the Oval Office, and he has nothing to show for it. There is no health care plan from the Republicans. The Affordable Care Act could be better, certainly, but it is far better than anything we ever had, and it is infinitely better than the nothing the Republicans want to offer the American people instead. In a press conference this afternoon, White House spokeswoman Caroline Leavitt told more lies. Here she is echoing Johnson's tale about Donald's health care priorities.
Is he willing to give more, to share more on what he'd like to negotiate on the Affordable Care Act later? Is he willing to say specifically what he would like and when?
But look, the president is definitely committed to fixing and improving our healthcare system. You saw it again last week when he had one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world coming into the Oval Office and promising to lower drug prices by 200, 300, 100% in many cases for various types of drugs for American patients. That is a huge fix to a broken system that has been ripping off the American people for far too long. So the president's very committed to this. But right now, we need to reopen the federal government, and the president is remaining very firm in that position.
Yeah, it's very firm. Okay, Donald has no healthcare priorities, as far as I'm aware, unless you consider being sedentary and eating a lot of fast food. Healthcare priorities, maybe. I don't know. Not judging. Now, should we just call her Ava Brown? I mean, it suits her. Anyway, here she is assuring us that Donald wants to end the shutdown now.
I was just in the Oval Office. He was on the phone with Speaker Johnson. He's also spoken with the Senate Majority Leader, who are in touch with, of course, moderate Democrats and Democrats across the board, who we understand hopefully want to do the right thing by their constituents to reopen the government. So the president is being kept very well apprised of the ongoing shutdown on Capitol Hill. And of course, his position is very clear. There's nothing to negotiate, just reopen the government, and then we can talk about all the important issues facing our country.
So he hasn't called specific members of Congress?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Yeah, we'll figure it out after we open the government and give Republicans the credit for that without making any concessions, without negotiating. Sure. This means a couple of things. One, he's not at all serious about it, because if he were, he'd kind of maybe pick up the phone and talk to the Democrats. But here's the thing. I don't think he understands that he needs to. He doesn't understand how this works. He doesn't understand what the filibuster is. He doesn't understand that a deal isn't a one-way street. Now, he's gotten away with that for most of his career for reasons. But in this particular instance, there really does need to be some concession on the Republican side, or they're giving Democrats literally no incentive to work with them. Because as it stands, the Republicans' deal is terrible for the American people. Even Republicans, but Republicans in Congress, and Donald certainly don't care about that. They just want to have their cake and eat it too. They want to blame Democrats for the shutdown, but give them absolutely no incentive to fix things. By the way, as of today, Donald is still saying that during the shutdown, he plans to lay off government workers and permanently, which is to say, fire them. In the past, employees have just been furloughed. I mean, that's no fun because it means they're not getting paid, but they have a job to go back to when the shutdown ends. That's not what the Trump regime is planning right now. In order to get back at Democrats, whatever that means, they plan to fire potentially thousands of civil servants just because. I guess to threaten Democrats into making a deal that is terrible for the American people, or to make it seem like the Democrats are the bad guy in this scenario. When asked about this issue, Levitt, can we come up with a synonym for lied? She was incredibly mendacious, and she tried to shift the blame. Take a look.
On the layoff of federal workers, potentially, the president said yesterday that Democrats will be to blame if federal workers lose their jobs. Historically, though, in past shutdowns, workers have been furloughed, but they have not been laid off en masse. So wouldn't that be the president's call to lay people off?
As I've said repeatedly, Caitlin, this conversation about layoffs would not be happening right now if the Democrats did not vote to shut the government down. And as I also said last briefing as well, we are $37 trillion in debt, and the government is not receiving any cash. So someone has to look at the balance sheet and be good stewards of the American taxpayer dollar. And layoffs are an unfortunate consequence of that.
Okay. How is it the Democrats' fault that Donald is going to fire people? That makes no sense. And also, Levitt, quite ironically, keeps pointing to the fact that we're $37 trillion in debt. Whose fault would that be? Oh, yeah, her boss. Of course, nobody ever asked her that question. Why are we $37 trillion in debt? I mean, she'd lie, but there's a way to ask the question to get the information out there. For example, let me journalism for a second. So, because of Donald's horrific economic policies and his insistence on giving tax cuts to the obscenely wealthy and corporations, this country is $37 trillion in debt. How do you explain that? You know, that kind of thing. Later in the day, Donald spoke to members of the press in the Oval Office, which is always fun for us. He told a lot of rambling lies about many subjects, including the shutdown, layoffs, and healthcare. And we're going to take a look at it.
The Democrats are the ones that started this, and if you think about it, it's about health care to a large extent. It's about, we want great health care for people. We don't want to give the money away to other people that come pouring into our country, and they've already poured because nobody's coming into our country. Now we have the border totally stopped. In fact, numbers we just announced again, we're at another zero. So we have zero for 4 months in a row. Zero people coming into our country illegally. That's a pretty good number. I'm not sure even I can believe that, Doug, if you want to know the truth. Zero. We went from millions of people to zero, but it's pretty close to that number. And the way you stop them is not to give away, not to announce that you're giving everybody free health care, free this and that. But what that does is it affects the American people, because the American people are unable to get good health care. Right now, we have a negotiation going on right now with the Democrats that could lead to very good things.
What kind of
and I'm talking about good things with regard to health care.
Are you speaking with Democratic leaders? What kind of negotiations?
Well, I don't want to say that. I don't want to say that.
Okay. I took notes. So this is all about healthcare, not that the Republicans are going to allow the Affordable Care Act subsidies to expire, which will make healthcare almost unaffordable for tens of millions of Americans. 4.2 million people will lose their health care next year alone because of the increase in costs. Costs will increase up to 75% for some people. And then there are all those people over the next 10 years who will just lose their health care entirely because the Affordable Care Act will stop covering many, many people. The Republicans are concerned. They don't want to expand the subsidies because Democrats want millions and millions of people who are pouring over the border to get health care, which, by the way, is a thing that does not happen. Undocumented workers cannot get health care through the Affordable Care Act, just as they cannot get Social Security or Medicaid. And then apparently they're not pouring. They've already poured because the border's closed now. And for 4 months, there have been zero border crossings. This is such an extraordinary thing. So incredible. And I mean that word literally, that Donald can't even believe it. Yes, because it's not true. And then he said it was close to zero. So make up your mind, little guy. You seem very confused today. Yeah, like I said, day ending in Y. Donald's hostile takeovers of Democratic cities continues to escalate. Chicago and Portland are the latest cities in the crosshairs. At her press conference today, Leavitt answered many questions about this topic, and she tried to spin the unwanted military presence in these cities as a safety issue. Let's take a look at what she had to say about long-term plans to keep troops in Democratic cities.
Courts allow you to ultimately send in the National Guard into Chicago and Portland. Do Democrats not have reason to be concerned that there are long-term plans by this administration to keep U.S. military or the National Guard in American cities, like what we're seeing here in Washington?
Why should they be concerned about the federal government offering help to make their cities a safer place? They should be concerned about this. They should be concerned about the fact that people in their cities right now are being gunned down every single night. And the president, all he's trying to do is fix it.
Okay. As far as I can tell, the only people being hurt right now are being hurt by the unconstitutionally deployed military in these cities. This is a solution in search of a problem. Donald wanted a pretext for sending National Guardsmen into Democratic cities. So he does it without the need for it, over the objection of the city's mayors and the state's governors. And then the people he's deployed create an environment in which it is almost certain violence will break out, and that will be the justification. This is dangerous. It is an abuse of power, and it is a very intentional incursion into state sovereignty. This, again, is how none of this is supposed to work. And yet, who's going to stop him? So Leavitt's explanation for these takeovers is that they are making cities safer, or that Donald cares so much about people in New York and Chicago and Portland and whatever city he has on his list, that he wants to do everything in his power to make their lives better. So in response to her failed reasoning, a reporter posed a very good question. If the question was asked, DC is as completely safe as Donald claims, why is our military still there? Take a look at her response.
And the National Guard is still here because the president and the mayor agree that it's a good thing for the city. Just like you're seeing in Memphis, for instance. We'll have National Guard deployed to Memphis. We have federal agents who are on the ground working with state and local law enforcement. The state police in Tennessee are part of this effort. The local metropolitan police in Memphis are part of this effort. State and local law enforcement and federal law enforcement should be working together. And it's a shame that we see in some cities across the country that their mayors are just simply refusing to cooperate because they don't like Donald Trump. And that's what this boils down to. And I don't think any American would disagree that Chicago needs more law enforcement reinforcements, that they need more resources. Look at this headline from over the weekend. At least 30 people shot during the weekend in Democrat-run Chicago. 5 of them were killed in one weekend. This is completely unacceptable, and the president wants to make American cities safer, and he's willing to work with anyone to do it.
Yeah, we can't stand him, but I'm pretty sure that's not the reason. It's that this is wrong. Cities like Chicago, like New York, they have their own law enforcement agencies. And to say that, well, we solve crime now because of National Guard deployments, but we can't ever leave. It's infantilizing, obviously, but that's also known as a police state. And that's not what the National Guard is for. It's not what our military is for. I have another question for Ava Brown. How many people died over the weekend because Donald has done things like dismantle agencies such as USAID? Answer that question. How much more blood did he get on his hands this weekend? Donald claims that Washington, D.C. asked for this. No. One city who most certainly did not ask for intervention, Portland, Oregon. Yet Donald is still trying everything in his power to deploy federal troops there, despite the fact that the judiciary keeps getting in his way. Here's ABC News with that story.
Overnight, in a tense Oregon hearing, a federal judge blocking President Trump's attempt to deploy members of the California National Guard into Portland, saying she was troubled by the Trump administration's attempt to circumvent an order she'd issued just a day earlier. Trump had already tried to send in Oregon National Guard troops to Portland. That was halted on Saturday. The administration then tried on Sunday to send the troops in from California. Then late last night, Judge Karen Immerget, a Trump appointee, issued a new, broader order prohibiting the administration from using federal control to send any state's National Guard into Oregon, and pressing the government's attorney, saying, quote, "You are an officer of the court. Do you believe that this is an appropriate way to deal with my order, or an order that a judge issues that you disagree with, or is that an appropriate mechanism to appeal as you have done?"
See, sometimes even judges appointed by Donald understand the rule of law and when it's being defied and defiled. Chicago is also not taking Donald's threats lying down. Just this afternoon, Mayor Johnson announced that the city will be enforcing ice-free zones. The mayor is ordering the city property cannot be used as staging grounds for raids by ICE. This includes parking lots next to public schools, libraries, parks, and city buildings. What's been going on has been in Chicago has been nothing short of shocking, even though I know we're not supposed to allow ourselves to be shocked by anything. But it's just another indication of how easy it is for a corrupt administration with a depraved agenda to make incursions if there are literally no guardrails anymore. Because clearly the fascist Republican Party is either too afraid or too intimidated or completely on board with all of this, and they're not going to do anything. And as I said, having the corrupt, illegitimate Supreme Court as a backstop is hardly comforting. We dropped a video today about the ways in which Chicago residents are fighting back against the depravities of ICE. So please check that out. It's about, as I said, the Chicago takeovers and more. And don't forget to like it and share it and comment and all of that other stuff. Okay, so as we know, some things can serve two purposes. On the one hand, the hostile takeovers of American cities is intentional, and it is designed to weaken opposition, to chill Americans' willingness to assemble peacefully and protest. But it's also a distraction. And Donald desperately wants us to stay distracted from the Epstein scandal. And, I think the government shutdown was, at least in part, to make sure that that whole thing was put on hold in the hopes that people would forget about it. But let's not forget about it. Let's talk about the Epstein files and the scandal that is entirely of Donald's own making. There was actually big news today regarding the appeal of convicted Epstein accomplice Ghislaine Maxwell. Here's NBC with some of that story.
The Supreme Court rejecting a bid to hear Ghislaine Maxwell's appeal. Maxwell argues she was unjustly prosecuted for her role helping Jeffrey Epstein recruit and groom girls as young as 14. In 2022, she was sentenced to 20 years behind bars for sex trafficking.
What Miss Maxwell's team tried to do is they tried really to turn one of the great travesties of injustice when it comes to child sex trafficking, the non-prosecution agreement by Alex Acosta, to allow Jeffrey Epstein to continue to abuse for another decade. They tried to use that to say, now you also can't prosecute Miss Maxwell because technically she would have been included as a co-conspirator, and that would apply to the entire United States, even though it very clearly only applied to Florida. So that's what she tried to do, and thankfully the Supreme Court did not buy it, just like every court did not buy it. It was a real Hail Mary argument, and on behalf of the victims, we're very pleased.
Wow, the Supreme Court did something right for a change. So shocking. But it would have been crossing a line even the corrupt, illegitimate supermajority was not willing to cross to take on Maxwell's appeal. Now, I don't know, and most of us don't know whether or not Maxwell has incriminating dirt on Donald, whether or not she has any evidence linking him directly to Epstein's crimes and her own. He acts like she does. That's for sure. I mean, the deputy attorney general met with Maxwell and her attorney for hours. That is not something that's typically done. And then she was transferred to a minimum security prison, like one of those country club federal prisons. Why? She was convicted of horrific crimes, of conspiring with Jeffrey Epstein to rape and sex traffic girls and young women. Why would anybody, one, want to be in a room with that person, and two, do her any favors? Well, again, Donald and many of those in his close inner circle, like Kash Patel and Pam Bondi, have been acting like he's guilty of something. I'm not making this up. And now we're hearing speculation that Donald might actually pardon Maxwell, pardon her for having been complicit in the rape and sex trafficking of girls and young women in exchange for her silence. What conclusion could we possibly draw from that if he were to do it? You would think that every single person in the Trump regime, from Donald on down, would want immediately to quash rumors that he was even thinking of pardoning this vile, convicted criminal. Right? Wrong. Here's Levitt leaving the possibility wide open.
You're welcome. The Daily Mail. Today, the Supreme Court declined to hear Ghislaine Maxwell's appeal. Will Trump rule out granting her clemency? Is that something the White House is considering?
It's not something I've heard discussed, and we don't comment on clemency requests that may or may not have been made, but I'm certainly not tracking that one at this point in time.
Oh, who would track something like that? Answer, yeah, he's totally considering it. Like, she's the press secretary. I mean, her job is theoretically to keep the American people informed, but her job is to spin things in Donald's favor. Why, for a nanosecond, she would want anybody thinking that he was considering a pardon or hadn't 100% ruled it out? Well, that's a fascinating question. It's Monday. So let's breathe, shall we? All right, we have reached our emotional support moment. Hallelujah. It is almost Halloween. We can say that because it's October. You can't say that in August. Like when I walked into a CVS in August and there were Halloween cards and decorations for sale, I found that disconcerting. But Halloween is actually right around the corner. And Oregon Zoo has a pumpkin day. So here's how it works. Handlers use pumpkins for enrichment. We have elephants, bears, big cats, and they essentially, well, you know what? I'm just going to let you watch because it's kind of awesome. And this is from last year, so you're going to see what they have to look forward to. That was adorable. Wow. Who knew? Animals and gourds. All right. Let us get to your questions, comments, etc. Marie is a new member. Thank you so much and welcome. It's wonderful to have you. Julia, thank you very much, Julia. Question: did you have to do a residency as a psychologist? I had to do an internship and write a dissertation. I did my internship at a state psychiatric hospital working in the admissions ward, which was fascinating. And I wrote my dissertation on stalking victims. Julia, again, thank you. Comment: I'm having foot surgery in February. Wish me luck. Good luck. That seems like a very long time from now, but it's probably not. I mean, yeah. So good luck for sure. And keep us posted. Royal Tracy, thanks so very much. Comment: hello there. And hello to you. Mighty Cheryl gifted 1 Mary Trump Media membership. Thank you, Mighty Cheryl, as always. In the middle of nowhere. Also gifted 1 Mary Trump Media membership. Thank you. In the middle of nowhere. And Julia gifted 1 Mary Trump. We're on a tear. Thank you, Julia, for gifting 1 Mary Trump Media membership. Mighty Cheryl, the twofer has arrived. Thank you so much for that. This is a Merry Monday fee. Hope the negotiations with your cats are going well. Passing cat treats to make an appearance more likely. Yeah, Cap doesn't need any cat treats. I'm going to talk to Lyndon. I'm going to get Lyndon in here. Cap, I can get Cap in here. But if I try to hold her for longer than 11 seconds, she will exsanguinate me. So, I try to avoid that. Dorothy, thank you so much for gifting 1 Mary Trump Media membership. Fabulous. Claire is a new member. Thank you very much for that, Claire, and welcome. Kathleen is a super sticker. Thank you so much for that, Kathleen. Susan, thank you as always for gifting 5 Mary Trump Media memberships. Fabulous. Limited Light, thank you very much. Much appreciated. Question: Mary, do you have the option to turn off ads during live transmission? I don't know. Sorry, I don't think so. We have nothing to do with that. So I don't know. But we'll look into it. That would be awesome. Aaron is a super sticker. Aaron, thank you so much. It's incredibly generous of you and much appreciated. Joe, thank you very much as always. Question, guess we can't swear in here anymore? Of course we can fucking swear, whatever. We can do whatever the fuck we want, quite frankly. How can we not swear? Here's my swear jar fee. Well, now I have to put in some money to the swear jar too, because I just swore twice. ESW, thank you very, very much. Question, is it just me or are Donald's digressions growing loopier each week? At this point, I'm not convinced he could pass the person, woman, man, camera, TV test. Oh, he could not. He could not. Yes, I don't know that he could pass the Montreal Cognitive Assessment. Mocha. I mean, nobody's going to give it to him at this point. That's for sure. It's hard to say because I'm so tired of listening to him that I don't know. I mean, I think the difference I see, he looks exhausted all the time. What a shame. Lynn is a new member. Thank you so much, Lynn. That's wonderful. Joke, thank you again. Comment, I'm ready, Scotty. Beam me up. Yeah, honestly. It was a tough weekend. In the middle of nowhere. Thank you so very, very much for that. Question. There's an amazing moment in a BS video in which a young man asks who was going to fix this. Bernie Sanders, I'm assuming. Bernie asked him his name, Matt, and he answered, "You are Matt." As somebody who won't live... Sorry. As somebody who won't live to the result, I'm putting my faith in Matt. By the way, not dead yet and hopeful. Okay. Well, yeah. Stay hopeful. And Matt, come on. It doesn't seem entirely fair to make it all Matt's responsibility. Loves my dog a lot. Thank you so very much as always. Comment, we non-MAGA people are not stupid. Donald wants to have a regime modeled after North Korea, and nothing Levitt says changes that fact. Donald should change the name of GOP to the Fascist Party. Well, it is one. So that would be truth in advertising for sure. I mean, right? Let's be real. These are fascists. And we don't do ourselves any good by tiptoeing around that fact. Rhonda gifted 1 Mary Trump Media membership. Thank you so much for that. Deanna, thank you very much for that. And cool, Deanna's a super sticker as well, which is awesome. So thank you. Okay, guys, that does it for us. Thank you to everybody who is listening on the podcast, who's watching on YouTube, who's watching streaming on Twitter, Substack, and Instagram. Hey, Instagram peeps, thank you for being here. We're going to keep doing that, and we're going to be streaming on Facebook soon. I have a little bit of breaking news. I don't know if it's breaking news exactly, but it's important. Scores of officials who have resigned or been forced out of the Justice Department this year are speaking out against its destruction. So I just read the lead of this article. Violating court orders, gutting anti-corruption efforts, imperiling national security, and weaponizing law enforcement against Donald's perceived enemies. These are the ways in which Donald and his appointees are destroying the Justice Department, say scores of career employees who were recently pushed out of the DOJ under Donald's second term. Quote, the letter says, quote, "We believe it's our duty to sound the alarm about this administration's degradation of the DOJ's vital work and its assault on the public servants who do it," unquote. So far, this open letter has been signed by 288 former officials. I expect that number to grow quite significantly. Continuing, the letter goes on, quote, "We call on all Americans whose safety, prosperity, and rights depend on a strong DOJ to speak out against its destruction. This administration's lies about the deep state and exaggerations about government inefficiency have eroded the respect our country once held for public servants. Demonizing, firing, demoting, involuntarily transferring, and directing employees to violate their ethical duties has already caused an exodus of over 5,000 of us, draining the department of priceless institutional knowledge and expertise and impairing its historical success in recruiting top talent," unquote. So yes, I hope many, many hundreds and thousands of those let go and treated horribly by the Trump regime signed that letter. And I hope the American people get that message, because what has been done to the DOJ and in particular its once storied Civil Rights Division should break everybody's heart. Thank you to everybody who became a new member, to everybody gifting new memberships, to all of our super stickers and everybody giving us gifts. We so appreciate it. Also to our kick-ass moderators. Do I have to put something in a swear jar for that? I don't know. I'm not sure what the rules are, but I will. Quick thing, simplest way to support us is to subscribe to our channel. We're trying to get to 480,000 subscribers. Also, we have pre-recorded videos every day, 7 days a week, 2 a day in many cases. Like them, share them, watch them, of course, and comment on them. Helps tremendously. Spread the word. And finally, to my amazing team, it feels like Friday already, so you can imagine how hard these guys have to work. So props to them as always. They get better all the time, which is kind of mind-blowing, to be honest with you. So thanks for everything you guys do. I will be back here tomorrow, Tuesday, at 6 p.m. Eastern for Mary Trump Live. In the meantime, everybody, please stay safe and be kind. Thanks. Good night.